Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, we have a ton of news stories to get into today. So let's kick off talking with some AEW stories. And let's talk about possibly the launch of a new championship within All Elite Wrestling. Because as you can see on the screen there, AEW has seemingly teased the launch of a new AEW championship bout. Now, on Wednesday night, AEW's official Twitter handle posted two close-up shots of a bout along with the eyes emoji. Now, reacting to the post, many fans on social media have speculated that this could be AEW finally preparing to launch the rumored Trios Championships or possibly some women's tag team titles as well. Now, last December, AEW CEO, head of creative, and a plethora of other titles, Tony Khan, was on a media call, and he said that plans were in place to introduce Trios titles this year. He said, quote, "If it happens, it will most likely be in 2021. I've been seriously thinking about that. I think there's a lot of momentum for it. We have a lot of great Trios teams." Now, I think what's important here is to stress that this is just a tease, and possibly this could just be the idea of AEW introducing new replica title bouts, because it's not on the screen here, but if you go onto AEW's, if you go onto their Instagram story, they show this a bit closer up, and it looks to actually be one part of the AEW World Championship coming out of one of those sort of velvet bags that they carry championships in. So this could just be a situation where they're selling replica championships. Now, I don't know. I'm not a replica championship hunter or buyer or any stretch of the imagination or anything like that. But I guess they don't sell replica championships right now. So this could just be a case of AEW finally selling replica championships, legitimate replica championships, not the toy ones you can buy in the store for kids, legitimate replica championships. It might just be a case of AEW finally selling them, which if that is the case, then maybe we should calm down a little bit about Trios Championships or Women's Tag Team titles. If they are going to launch a new championship, a new division, if you will, for championships to be contested in, I think it's more likely to be the Trios Championships. That's something that's been rumored for a while. I don't think the women's tag team titles are really coming along anytime soon, if I'm honest. I think, they're just getting to a point where the women's championship division is kind of slowly, very slowly getting their house in order there. So I just don't even think it's the time, frankly, to introduce women's tag team titles yet at all. So I don't think it's that. The Trios Championships, of course, have been rumored for a long, long time. If you go back to, I think it's probably the final show prior to the Empty Arena shows in Daily's Place last year, right before the pandemic. Of course, you had the formation of Death Triangle. You also have the Best Friends. You also have Jurassic Express. All of that at the time was really laying the groundwork for a Trios Championship. As I mentioned, they've got quite a few Trios teams there in AEW, and I think they wanted to capitalize on, obviously, what Ring of Honor have with the six-man tag team championships as well. And you've got to look at ways of differentiating yourself from the competition, namely WWE, and even companies like Impact, etc., and they don't have those Trios Championships. As I mentioned, Ring of Honor does, but I think it's a unique way to differentiate themselves from WWE. And certainly, they've got the talent there to pull it off. Part of the problem, we've spoken about this time and time again, and this is partially why they have so many factions in AEW, is because they've got this ginormous roster. They've got a huge, huge roster of talent. And a plethora of talent under contract, sometimes that they don't even know what to do with. So much so that they have to put them in factions. You go in this faction, you go in this faction, you go in this faction. And when asked about this, the Young Bucks, they pretty much put the cards on the table. They showed their hand as to why they do that. The reason why, they said, one, is because it's the New Japan philosophy. It's the New Japan style of having lots of factions on the program, which is fair enough. It's just a style that I think people in North America and possibly around the world that aren't familiar with Japanese wrestling or the New Japan product, they're just not familiar with that style of booking. I don't have a problem with that at all. I think different is good. But they have admitted, as part of their philosophy then, yes, it takes part from the New Japan philosophy of booking lots of people with factions and stables, but in reality also it's a vehicle, it's a method to get as many people off on television as possible, because they've got so many people under contract, and it's very difficult. Especially when you've only got 2 hours of television on TNT. That's becoming 3 hours later on in August with Rampage. We've got some Rampage details coming up. But when you've only got 2 hours Wednesday night on TNT, that's your prime real estate. You can talk about Dark, you can talk about Dark Elevation. That's not getting on cable television in prime time on Wednesday nights. It's just not. They've said that, basically the situation is we're going to have to put them in factions because it's the best way of getting people on TV, because they can, even if there's a singles match, the rest of the faction can come out. They can stand on the stage. They can stand at ringside. You can have multi-people matches. You can have tag matches, 6-person tag team matches, 8-person, 10 people tag team matches. You can do what you want. So I think that's the reason, mostly. I think they can talk about the Japanese style of booking and the Japanese philosophy of booking, which is there, that is true. But in reality, a big part of it is getting people on television. So by introducing Trios Championships, it adds stakes to this situation, and it's another ranking to measure. And I think sometimes we say that about not maybe AEW because they're pretty good for having stakes in their matches, and wins and losses genuinely do matter unless it's a lights out unsanctioned match. But wins and losses do matter, and they do dictate the rankings, and they do dictate who's going to be challenging for the championships, which I really do appreciate. I think one of the problems on WWE television right now is not a lot of the matches have stakes or mean anything. So having those Trios Championships, suddenly the 6-people tag team match, they do make sense. And you do see on, I don't know if it's on the website, but they do track the wins and losses in Trios competition, which says to me that this has been an idea or a desire by AEW to introduce these Trios Championships for a long, long time. I think just because of the pandemic, plans got halted. Because as I mentioned, if you go back to those Dynamites right prior to the pandemic hitting last year, if you go back to sort of March, February time last year, it was very, very obvious that they were laying the foundation for a Trios Championship to being introduced. It's just very plain for there to see. And obviously the pandemic changed that, halted that. But as we're coming back out of it, as we're getting back to a touring style for not just AEW, but for all companies, it looks to be like Trios Championships are returning. But for this specifically, I think it's probably the Replica Championships, if I'm honest. Because if you look closely, that does look quite a bit like the AEW World Championship. And as I mentioned, if you go on the AEW Instagram page, if you go on the Instagram story, it looks way more likely that it's a Replica Championship situation because it's literally pulling out the AEW World Championship out of a velvet bag. So I think that's probably the situation. But look, time will tell, and it's obviously going to open up the conversation about Trios Championships going forward. AEW in New York. Yes, AEW made a big announcement yesterday that they will be making their New York debut. Obviously, they're going to be returning to live events on the road this summer. And AEW President Tony Khan announced on WFAN Sports Radio yesterday that AEW is indeed coming to New York City on Wednesday, September 22nd, the day before my birthday, by the way. The event will be held at the USTA Arthur Ashe Stadium in Flushing, and tickets for this show will go on sale on July 16th. Now, of course, this event will mark AEW's debut in the New York City area. It will also be their first time running a stadium show. The company has advertised the event as the AEW Dynamite Grand Slam, which should be a supercard of sorts, a supercard episode, another TV special version of Dynamite. Of course, we've got 4 coming up in July anyway. We've got Road Rager, Fyter Fest, and Fight for the Fallen. Fyter Fest is a 2-night event, but we're going to have another one in September, and it's going to be the AEW Dynamite Grand Slam in Queens, New York. Now, it promises to be a huge show from one of the home of the ATP's US Open, which can hold nearly 24,000 fans. Now, the arena is considered to be the largest tennis venue in the world, and it certainly is going to be interesting as to attendances and capacity. Now, given the size of the stadium, All Elite Wrestling could potentially host its largest crowd to date. Tony Khan spoke with the New York Daily News in regards to AEW's first time in New York and shared his thoughts on the occasion. He said, quote, "No city is more synonymous with wrestling than New York City. And AEW is a new company, and a company is in the business of both embracing tradition and trailblazing, trying to start new traditions and new history." Now, the show will be an historic event in several ways. It could produce the largest crowd in AEW history, but it will also mark the first wrestling event to take place at the Arthur Ashe Stadium. So that is certainly very, very interesting as well. And I think, obviously, AEW were going to be going to Rochester, New York. That was going to be their debut in the city last year prior to the pandemic. They were just a week away from it actually happening. That was going to be the debut of the late Brody Lee in his hometown. It was going to be the reveal of him as the Exalted One. It was also going to mark the debut of Matt Hardy with AEW as well in Rochester, New York. Of course, that show got cancelled, postponed due to the pandemic. And the following week was meant to be in New Jersey, East Rutherford, New Jersey, and that was going to be the first Blood and Guts match between the Elite and the Inner Circle. And of course, that never happened as well. We got our first Blood and Guts match this year, last month. So exciting, very exciting. Look, New York City and pro wrestling go hand in hand. As Tony Khan mentioned, there is hardly a city more synonymous with pro wrestling than New York City. I think it's fascinating that they've decided to run the tennis stadium. We've got some comments on that in a second. I think Chris Jericho spoke about they could run the Barclays Center if they wanted to. They could run Madison Square Garden if they wanted to, but they decided to run the Arthur Ashe Stadium because it's different and no pro wrestling company has done it before. And I don't want to be, the AEW stan. I don't want to be the AEW mark by any stretch of the imagination. Lord knows I don't. But I think that's an interesting point of view. I really do, because look, if they ran the Barclays Center, if they ran Madison Square Garden, there could certainly, it would be a big deal because of WWE's connotations and their links to the arenas. Now, in addition to that, I wouldn't be surprised if WWE has an agreement with Barclays Center, with Madison Square Garden, saying, look, we run pro wrestling here, not you. Now, they used to have that with MSG. That kind of went away for a while. That's why you had the New Japan and the Ring of Honor Supercard there back in, when was that, 2019? But obviously, I don't know if that's changed because WWE has since run TV tapings in there. They had SmackDown and Raw in 2019 there on back-to-back nights. So I don't know if WWE even has a lock on the Barclays Center. I don't know if they have a lock on Madison Square Garden. Obviously, there is rumors that Survivor Series is going to be hosted in the Barclays Center later this year as well, with rumors about The Rock possibly making an appearance, all that kind of stuff. So, look, I think it's fascinating. I think it's fascinating to hold the event inside a tennis stadium. I think the look and the aesthetic to that is going to be very, very exciting. Can AEW sell out 24,000 fans? Time will only tell. It is New York. There's a huge popularity of pro wrestling in New York. You've got some real diehard fans, but not just that. They'll come from the surrounding areas, whether it's, Boston, Philadelphia, etc. They'll all come down. Baltimore, Maryland in general. So I given AEW's popularity, especially with hardcore pro wrestling fans in the Northeast, it'll be interesting. It'll certainly be interesting. I have a feeling that if they wanted to, they could. But time will only tell. This would be a big test, not just because of drawing anywhere, but also the pandemic. So fascinating. If AEW gets 24,000 people inside that arena, that's a statement. That is a big, big statement. Can they do it? Time will tell. I think they're going to be obviously heavily hoping on obviously the diehard fans of the New York area, but also those surrounding areas as well. And trust me when I say they're going to load up that show. They're calling it a Grand Slam Dynamite. Obviously, Grand Slam is because of the tennis theme, right? The US Open is a Grand Slam tournament in tennis, but it's going to be fascinating. Going to absolutely be fascinating. And just for the look and the aesthetic alone, I think it's going to be great. This could be one of the better, more historic episodes of Dynamite, truly. Not just because, obviously, the attendance and the arena, but possibly for some big events that are scheduled to happen there. So that's very exciting for AEW fans. Now, Cody Rhodes responded to a tweet on social media that was a bit skeptical of AEW's ability to sell this out. One fan said, quote, "Good luck getting that many people in attendance." And Cody said, "I've been told that before." Of course, referencing the All In event in 2018. You can't sell out an arena. You can't do a 10,000 arena without a WWE show, all that kind of stuff. So Cody seems confident. I'm sure they would have done some. Cody's talking about focus groups and workshops. I'm sure they would have done market research, right? Now, Chris Jericho spoke about AEW's first event in New York City. He spoke about, his comments certainly got a lot of people talking because Chris Jericho always does. Now, as I mentioned, it was noted that AEW are going to have their first ever show in New York. It's going to be located in Queens at the Arthur Ashe Stadium with a capacity of just under 24,000 fans, with tickets going on sale Friday, July 16. Now, Chris Jericho also had a conversation with the New York Daily News and said AEW is going back on the road, or AEW going back on the road is a real cool end to the chapter of our lives that we all want to move on from, referring to the COVID-19 pandemic that cancelled tours and led to limited crowds or even empty arenas at periods of time. Jericho called AEW's New York City, I nearly swore there, a New York City debut. New York City debut, a celebration and a victory. He said AEW will be vindicated as the coolest pro wrestling company in the world today. That line certainly got a lot of people talking. He said, quote, "It's a trumpeting call that AEW is back on the road at the highest of levels. It's ready to take control of New York City. It's a celebration. It's a victory. We'll be vindicated as the coolest wrestling company in the world today. What fans can expect is what we've been doing, just at a higher intensity level and a higher energy level because of the people in the crowd giving us more inspiration and more energy and more reward for what we're doing." Now, certainly the line that's got a lot of people talking there is talking about being the coolest wrestling company in the world today. Now, I don't really want to give my opinion on that because, I mean, what determines being cool, right? I have my interpretation of what is and isn't cool. I'm sure you will have your interpretation of what and what isn't cool. Certainly social media does. You go on there and you go on there for 5 minutes. They'll tell you what they think is cool and what isn't cool. So there's no real difference there. Look, AEW, let's put it this way, and I don't mean this to be a really diplomatic, sitting on the fence answer, but in my opinion, it's what it is, right? AEW and the WWE product are completely different. Yes, they're pro wrestling, but AEW is obviously skewed to a different audience than WWE is. Yes, they're going after the pro wrestling audience, but they have different audiences. The best evidence of that is this Friday night experiment. Well, not much of an experiment, being forced to be on Friday nights because they've been preempted by the NBA playoffs, but because of Dynamite being on Friday nights, we have seen concrete evidence, arguably for the first time. We saw it a little bit with the Wednesday Night Wars, but people didn't really buy into that. But for the first time, we truly have at this point seen that WWE and AEW have a distinct, different audience. Yes, you have crossover. You're always going to have crossover. But it's something like 13% of people that are watching 1 minute of SmackDown on Fox on Friday are watching 1 minute of Dynamite on TNT once the show's finished. That's a pretty distinct difference in audience. So you've got the majority of the SmackDown audience isn't watching Dynamite and vice versa. That says quite a lot. So obviously the AEW fans will think that AEW is the coolest wrestling company around right now. WWE fans might think something different, and you've got those fans that they like both, and there are elements to both shows and both companies that they like. They also like Impact, they also like Ring of Honor, they also like MLW, they also like New Japan, they also like whoever. There's a lot of they like the NWA. There's loads of other companies to watch and enjoy. And they think they're the coolest wrestling companies around as well. So I'm sure that just these comments, Jericho sometimes does this to get people talking. And look, they've got to sell a lot of tickets for this show, right? And they go on sale in about a month's time. So he'll keep on saying these things. And he'll keep saying them because hopefully it means more tickets are sold. And then this big event's more of a success. So that is what it is. Now, the Young Bucks, they did a tweet talking about this as well, and they threatened to no-show the Dynamites in New York. They did one of their infamous Twitter bios, and the bio said this. You can see it on the screen. It said, quote, "If New York City sells out because of us and we decided not to go, that's the second time that that's happened." Now, this is obviously referring to that New Japan and Ring of Honor show. They also referred to the New Japan crossover show from April 2019 in Madison Square Garden. The duo was supposed to perform at the event, but later withdrew after signing on the dotted line with All Elite Wrestling. Now, the Young Bucks were at the height of their popularity back then and certainly played a role in getting the show sold out in a matter of minutes. Now, if you recall the controversy, essentially, like I said, the Young Bucks were heavily involved in all of this advertising for this New Japan and Ring of Honor show. The same with Kenny Omega. I think Cody Rhodes was also advertised for this show, and obviously none of them appeared, and certainly fans felt a little bit frustrated, shall we say. They felt a little bit frustrated and hard done by, and again, I'm trying to rack my brains around it, but from what I can recall, the New Japan element of that show was far better than the Ring of Honor side of that show, and if... I certainly don't think Ring of Honor is going to be doing another Madison Square Garden show anytime soon. Maybe New Japan, who knows? But the Bucks continuing to have a very strong Twitter bio game on social media. Let's talk about AEW Rampage. Of course, that's set to debut in August. And Tony Khan has spoken to PW Insider and given some extra details about the AEW Rampage show. Now, AEW will have 4 weekly shows once Rampage premieres in August. Dark Elevation on Mondays, Dark on Tuesdays, Dynamite on Wednesdays, and Rampage on Fridays. Khan was asked how the company will handle taping of all 4 shows once they return to touring next month. He said, quote, "No, it's going to be different formats. With Rampage, there's going to be some weeks Rampage will be live, and there'll be some weeks where we plan to tape Rampage after Dynamite, including here at Arthur Ashe Stadium in New York City, where we will be filming also after. We'll do Dynamite live, and we'll also film Rampage. And in some markets where we have these amazing crowds, I think that's okay." Khan confirmed that the Rampage premiere will be live and talked about how Rampage will serve as the go-home show for future AEW pay-per-view events. "We can take advantage of it and give them Dynamite and Rampage," Khan continued. "There's also going to be times where we're going to do a lot of live Rampages. We're going to have a live debut. We're going to do some great live episodes. The go-home will be live for All Out at the Sears Center. We'll also be live for the go-home in St. Louis, and it'll be great. It'll be Rampage. It will be really special for us. I think it will be, sometimes we'll do it after Dynamite. We'll do Dynamite, then we'll do Rampage. Sometimes if Rampage is not live, then that will be one taping." Now, Khan also revealed that Elevation will be shorter in the future as it will be taped before Dynamite instead of Dark being taped before Dynamite. Khan noted that he plans to find a venue to tape Dark and other content from. He said, before Dynamite, we used to tape Dark. That's going to change. I'm going to tape Elevation before Dynamite now. So it's going to be shorter Elevation, and I may add matches and explain where I'll add them from. I'm going to procure a venue for use to tape Dark and other content. That'll be great. And I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be tremendous, and it'll be where we shoot Dark. We'll do tapings, and it will be, as it has been, it's a developmental situation, and it will continue being developmental. And it's been great doing it all under one roof or one taping, and there's been advantages. But there'll be some advantages now doing it as its own taping and being able to give 100% attention to these and not having to think about Dynamite and soon Rampage and Elevation also. So there's going to be a lot of changes there. And obviously that can be a bit difficult to follow what Tony Khan is saying there. So essentially what he's saying is that I guess he hasn't decided when it comes to Rampage. Some weeks it's going to be live, some weeks it isn't. They're going to obviously have to plan that out certainly when they're selling tickets, if they're just going to be doing Rampage as a separate show. So he's saying that some weeks it is going to be live, some weeks it's going to be taped. It depends on the venue, it depends on the location. So time will only tell about that one. I think it's interesting he's saying Elevation is now going to be taped before Dynamite. So that Dark taping is now becoming an Elevation taping. And reading between the lines there, I think what he's saying is Dark is almost going to become, I don't like to use this comparison because people get upset, but they're NXT essentially. I wouldn't be surprised, he's saying about procuring a location, a permanent location. I wouldn't be surprised if the Nightmare Factory in Atlanta, Georgia becomes the permanent taping location for AEW Dark. It's a developmental situation anyway, that program, like he said. Obviously, it does feature some talents from the AEW roster, but mostly it's developmental talent trying to find out which are going to be the next stars for them to sign. I wouldn't be surprised if going forward they decide to tape all of the Dark episodes outside of the Nightmare Factory in Atlanta, Georgia, because you've got the talent obviously there ready. It's a good place for them to fly into for Atlanta, and you've always got people, AEW representatives there, whether it's QT Marshall, Cody Rhodes, Dustin Rhodes, etc. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the new taping location for Dark going forward. It's at the Nightmare Factory in Atlanta, Georgia, and then they have Elevation tape before Dynamite and sometime Rampage afterwards, but sometimes having Rampage live. That looks like what it's going to be. Once you have those tapings, though, that are Rampage, that are Elevation before the show, so maybe that's an hour, and then you have Dynamite live, which is 2 hours, and then you have an extra hour, which is Rampage afterwards. That's a 4-hour TV taping. That's pretty long. That's a pretty long TV taping. Now, obviously, I know some TV tapings in reality are quite long. I went to the old ECW and SmackDown TV tapings back in the day, and that was a Dark match. That was ECW, which was 1 hour. That was SmackDown. That was 2 hours. And then a Dark match main event, that was usually about 20 minutes as well. So you're getting close to 4 hours, I suppose. But we'll have to wait and see how that works out. There's a lot of spinning plates right now. A lot of spinning plates right now when it comes to Dynamite, AEW, TV tapings, etc. So that's going to be fascinating to see what they do going forward. Now, the Acclaimed, Tony Khan obviously was doing the rounds yesterday, obviously talking about this New York City show. And AEW president in one interview recently disclosed that WWE tried their best to sign the Acclaimed, Anthony Bowens and Max Caster. The Acclaimed is obviously, for me, one of the fastest rising teams in AEW right now, thanks to the personality, the in-ring style, and, of course, the raps, the freestyles of Platinum Max Caster becoming one of the most popular tag teams in AEW. Now, initially they performed mainly on Dark, but gradually the audience has warmed to them, even with no audience being there, and they've become fixtures on Dynamite and other programming. Now, in the same interview with PW Insider, Tony Khan revealed that WWE initially wanted to sign the Acclaimed, of course, after watching Max Caster and Bowen singles matches on AEW Dark. Khan stated that this prompted him to pair them up and sign them to a full-time contract to avoid losing them to the WWE. He said, quote, "The Acclaimed were singles wrestlers. They both went to the same school, Creator Pro, but they'd never teamed. And I saw them both on Dark, and they were, frankly, the WWE put a little pressure on me with both of them. I think they were both people WWE wanted, and I really wanted to use both of them, and I thought about it, and I had this thought about the Acclaimed, and I put them together as a tag team." Now, that's certainly very interesting, but it's not the first time. It's not the first time, of course, because we've heard this story over and over again, haven't we? I guess this is the problem. I guess it's the problem, isn't it? Is that when you have these stars on AEW Dark, that a lot of the names, as I mentioned, they're developmental names. They don't have a contract with AEW. They're coming in for essentially a live tryout that they're going to put on TV. And WWE on a couple of occasions have looked at this and said, we want that person. And they take them. They take them away. most of the time, I think that AEW has the jump on the talent because they've already got the conversation with them, and the talent obviously feels an element of loyalty. You gave me the opportunity to, appear on a big-time program where no one else did, etc. So it's just interesting that WWE, for a company that we don't pay any attention, AEW, we've never heard of them before. They're watching Even Dark for talent. So they do, obviously, pay a lot of attention. So quit lying, WWE. Finally, MJF and Sammy Guevara, their Twitter exchange, their Twitter back and forth has continued, with MJF being pretty savage in terms of some of the things he tweeted about Sammy Guevara. Now, this started off with Sammy Guevara doing another tweet, posting an unflattering image about MJF. He said, bruh, and then put a load of crying laughter emojis, posting another embarrassing picture of MJF, which he's done several times at this point. Well, MJF responded with a tweet that referenced Sammy Guevara's controversy with Sasha Banks. He said, quote, apparently, Sammy posted a very unflattering photo of me. I've reported it, but I genuinely hope he learns from his actions and doesn't get cancelled. ... Again. Now, I was obviously referencing Sammy Guevara's controversial comments that resurfaced last year regarding WWE superstar Sasha Banks. At the time, Sammy Guevara was suspended indefinitely and had to pay a fine, or his wages were donated to the Jacksonville Women's Shelter. Yes, this was a very serious offense. He also underwent sensitivity training, and there was questions at the time whether or not he would even come back to AEW. Well, Sammy Guevara responded. He said, quote, that's cool. Just take a jab at one of the most difficult times of my life. I like how everyone thinks this is, quote, good character work. Meanwhile, you truly are a real-life piece of SH, you know the rest. So it was, I don't know if that's legitimate. I would assume MJF, even though his character is a bit of a D-bag, I would assume that he would probably have called Sammy Guevara beforehand and let him know, hey, should we do this, and got his permission. So don't worry, I think they're fine. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these AEW news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about AEW, WWE, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestling News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.